toy fans, Aaron here. Today taking a look at Jar Jar Binks, specifically Tatooine version, released on the Power of the Jedi card in 2001. As many of you may recall, the Power of the Jedi line was the combination of the original trilogy and prequel trilogy action figures into one line. This gave us the character drawing of Obi-Wan Kenobi in front of the Darth Vader helmet on the left side of the card. To the right, you see that Star Wars Power of the Jedi logo. Through the blister, of course, you do see the included action figure and accessory. And to the left of that is the Jedi Force File, which is a fold-out booklet containing a bunch of information about the included character. Flipping over to the back side, here's how things are looking. On the upper right, you got a brief write-up about what I just mentioned, that this is the combination of the prequel and original trilogy lines. And then below that, you got a cutout in the card so you see the back side of that Force File, which gives some basic information about the figure. And then on the left half of the card, you got 16 other figures that were available in the line at this time. And now taking a look at the figure out of the packaging, overall looking very good, and as you can tell, this is getting pretty scene specific, which back in the day from Hasbro we did get from time to time. They concentrated on a character or a moment for that character and made an action figure out of it. So in this case, what we're getting is the ability to have Jar Jar with his hands next to his ears, sticking that tongue out, just like he did in Watto's shop, as Qui-Gon told him not to touch anything. Of course, there were a couple other times where his tongue was sticking out, when he was grabbing the fruit from the dinner table and such. Now, you're certainly not stuck with the arms being in that upright position, hands, next to the head. You got some shoulder articulation. You can certainly swing them down by the waist. He's not the worst looking figure in the world with the hands posed the way they are, but you don't have any elbow or wrist articulation to change that pose either. And that was pretty par for the course for the figures at that time. Really, the only ones that had any elbow swiveling in them were the ones that came with weapons. And besides, I gotta say, I rather like displaying them with the hands next to the head anyways. And I'm quite glad that Hasbro made this figure. It certainly makes it a little bit fun to have as an action figure, but unfortunately, you're not going to be able to remove that tongue. It is molded right into the head, so the figure is just constantly going to have this tongue sticking out. And over time, which I've had this open now for 19 years, I do feel like that tongue has held its position quite well. When I looked at it on the card, it seems like it's probably drooped a little bit, but overall, I still feel like it's holding up good. As far as the sculpting of the head, there's no denying it's Jar Jar Binks. Certainly looks like him. You've got some good detailing in the sculpt for the way the eyes look. You got a little eyelids and stuff sculpted in there. Can make out the sculpting for the nose and a few of the ridges along the head. Detailing within the sculpt for the ears also looks very nice. And some nice kind of curved horizontal lines going on as you get from the top of the head till about the mid part of the ear. And then it starts to transition, into these like vertical barbs or something that runs down right into the little gray tips of paint at the bottom of the ear. And then even through the neck, you've got some nice details being done in there for the skin sculpting. Painting overall for the head and really for the body, coloring feels like a little bit off to me. It's getting a borderline bright red, maybe a neon orange or something. Not quite neon, but it's still a very bright paint job. Feel like the coloring of that should have been muted just a little bit. Otherwise, kind of the yellowish skin tone of the figure doesn't seem to look too bad. Through the arms and upper chest, things are looking pretty good here also. I love the detail pattern being done on the skin through the sides of the arms. Seems quite representative of how the character looked. And the painting just looks fantastic. Nothing bleeding together. So you can really make out all those individual lines being done through there. Also some pretty nice fading of that orange paint for the skin tone on the outside of the arm as it gets to yellow underneath. Through the upper chest, you got some decent layering being done for the sculpting of the cloth. And it is all sculpted as one piece, so that vest is just part of the main chest. I think there were some figures where it was loosely sculpted, but I don't recall right now for certain. Otherwise, though, some nice gray painting as it gets to a much darker gray underneath. That little touch of yellow right at the center of the upper chest probably should be his skin. Don't feel like that coloring matches up all that well. Decent effort, though. Around his waist, you got a little wrap being done in there, and that is separately sculpted. Stays in place quite well, though. Some very subtle lines being sculpted in there for some folding of the fabric, especially as it stretches out around his backside. Certainly gives it a nice look of draping around his waist, and then you get into the legs of the figure. Great texturing of his cloth throughout there. And as you can see, the knees are pre-sculpted in kind of a bent position, which certainly goes along with the pose of the figure as he was sticking his tongue out. And even with all that in play, the figure still has no problem remaining standing up. Down at the bottom, some pretty decent detailing and sculpting for the feet. Some bits of orange spray painted on there with yellow being the base color of the skin. And just at the tips of toes, you got a little bit of gray painting in there for the nails. As far as articulation, the head swivels at a decent range going side to side. At the shoulders, it hinges up just a little past 90 degrees, and you get a full rotation in there. Full swivel at the waist. The legs do come pretty much straight out. Since they're sculpted at a bent position, it doesn't quite look that way though. And you even get them going back just a little bit. The wrap around his waist does get in the way for allowing any more movement beyond that. As far as accessories, of course, I don't know, I think an argument could be made that this would be another figure. You get a collapsed Pit Droid included. There's some nice detailing around the top of the head with some lines in there, the antennas sticking up, nice painting for that single eye port that, that he pushes to make it collapse. And for the rest, you can still kind of make out the body parts of the Pit Droid with the arms being on the side, the legs being folded down with the feet sticking out front. It is molded in this brown color that you're seeing. No additional weathering, scrapes, scratches, or anything, which once again, for what was being done in the line at the time, it's pretty much par for the course. And there's no other articulation to this Pit Droid. It is meant to just remain collapsed, so you're not going to be able to expand it out into a full-bodied Pit Droid, which is fine by me. I'm quite pleased that they found a way to give us a collapsed Pit Droid in the first place. And putting it next to one of the regular Pit Droid figures that were released, you can see as far as scaling and such, with the size of the head and body, it seems to match up quite well. And then here's a look at the included Force File booklet that just opens up. And that gives you a look at his statistics, his skills, along with the gear and tech that was used by the rest of the Gungans, an application to join the Jedi Quest Kids Club, and then a look at Jar Jar's allies and enemies, the adventures he went on, and then you got your bio information about Jar Jar Binks. So overall for me, I'm really happy that Hasbro made this figure. We certainly had no shortage of Jar Jar figures that were already released through the Episode 1 line, so in this case it was certainly nice to receive one that got pretty scene specific and portrayed Jar Jar with one of his iconic actions being sticking his tongue out at things. And I gotta say, I love that it came with a collapsed Pit Droid, because we had already received quite a few Pit Droids that were standing up, and since they weren't able to transform into a collapsed version, I love that we finally received one here. So that wraps this one up. Definitely let me know what your thoughts are on this figure in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.